Collins.
G'day Max, how are you? It's Neil Waters.
Oh, hello, Phil. Thanks for the call.
That's alright mate, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah,
Have I caught you at a good time?
yeah, no trouble at all.
Max, if it's okay with you, can I record this conversation?
I expected that might be the case.
Yep. Oh, that's cool. I like to get a record of people's accounts, not only for our YouTube channel, but just so I've got the details down, and I can recall the data if I need it later on.
Yeah, look, that's fine. I also want you to understand that this sighting was almost exactly a year ago, and I don't have any photos to support it.
That's all right, but that's still very recent in terms of sightings. So let's hear it, mate. What happened?
Okay, well, we were in fact driving back to Busselton from Tasmania, and we'd overnighted in Esperence and left Esperence in moderate fog, so it was a fairly slow journey for the first probably 30 kilometres or so, and then the fog slowly dissipated. All the way out there I was sitting behind a white SUV. I can't remember its registration or anything like that now, but as the fog dissipated, then the traffic started to spread out, and there was greater distance between the cars, and we started accelerating to normal road speed. And I would think it was probably about 40 odd kilometres east of Esperance. The SUV, which was now, I don't know, best part of 100 metres, I suppose, in front of me, suddenly jammed on his brakes. Really hard. You could see it wasn't just a matter of slowing down. You could see the front of the car nod, as it sort of took the weight. And I looked out on the right-hand side of the road, and there was very little traffic coming towards Esperance. So the right-hand side of the road, as far as I was concerned, was pretty much vacant. And there was this animal there, had just come out of the shrubbery on the side, and I said to Janice, my wife, who was sitting beside me, and she was looking out her side, I said, look, and the words of a Thylacine just didn't, or a Tassie tiger didn't occur to me at all. I just saw this thing and said, look, and it came out of the shrubbery and loped across the road in front of this SUV, and then went into the shrubbery on the left-hand side of the road, and from then on I lost it. But for some of that time I got a pretty good look at this animal, and it was not a dog, it was not a fox, it was a quadruped. It was sort of a camel-y colour, quite lean. In fact, it turned around and looked in my direction, and I could see that it had a relatively lean face and small ears, and it sort of loped. It wasn't the run that a dog makes or a fox. It just was not one of those animals. And as I say, it had a relatively lean body that tapered up fairly much towards the tail, and from halfway back along the body to the tail were a number of diagonal dark marks, and the tail was straight out like a board, absolute and quite long. I would say the tail was probably more than half the length of the body of this animal, and absolutely rigid. And I said, my God, that was a bloody Tassie tiger. And by this time, of course, it had gone in front of the other vehicle. It had started accelerating away, and as we went past this area where it went into the bush on the left-hand side of the road, there was nothing there to be seen. But I mentioned that to our son who lives in Tassie. No, it couldn't have been. No, it was a fox. No, it wasn't a fox, and it wasn't a dog. I'm quite familiar with what those animals look like, and the way it ran was not the way a fox or a dog moves. It sort of loped. It had a very curled leg sort of activity as it ran along. The paw and lower part of the leg came up fairly high behind its leg, and then it went out again. They weren't huge strides, but it sort of loped. I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't a gallop, and it wasn't the way a dog or a fox runs. It was shortish snout, and small ears, and I don't know, what more can I tell you?
Well, mate, you've pretty well nailed it in one go there. Like, I'd say just about 95% of the people that see these things are usually in shock, because they realise it's not a fox, it's not a dog, it's not a cat, it's not a dingo. And this gait, they keep describing this peculiar gait. Some say it was like it was injured or drunk, or some say it was like a gallop, some say it was like a canter. A lot of the people say it was loping along. That's a very common word that they use to describe it. It
moved reasonably fast across the road. It certainly wasn't as if it was desperately trying to get out of the vehicle, or a panic run at all. It was a fastish run, but certainly not a panic run.
Yeah, it was confidently going about its business.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's on the right-hand side of the road. It stopped and looked, and that's when it turned its head towards my vehicle, and that was where he could see the sort of general shape of the head and face. And then as it came out of the bushes, these stripes became visible. When I got back home here, I've got two homes, one in Launceston and the other one here. When I got back here, I had a look at Department of Conservation and Land Management, I think it was, and there are several hundred sightings in there. Unfortunately, if any photographic evidence is never totally convincing, and I felt a bit silly saying that I'd seen this thing, but the build, the rigid straight tail, and there was no sort of hanging hair as if it was a long-haired tail, and the stripes across it. I was just so surprised. I said to you, I said to Denise, look.
What did your wife say?
By the time she looked back from what she was doing, she didn't see it at all.
Oh, spewing.
So I don't even have anybody to substantiate, my claim. But it was just, and then I've only recently I found out about your organisation, and I thought, I'll just make a note about this, because there have been a number of sightings in the southwest, and of course the animal, despite it being called a Tassie tiger, I mean that's just a local colloquial name for the thing, because thylacines were quite common right across all the southern part of Australia.
Absolutely, and the tropical north too.
My understanding is that the dingo population was largely responsible for wiping them out.
Yeah, well, as you now know, the dingo population wasn't quite as successful as what modern science would like you to think.
Look, modern science is letting me down in a lot of ways. I think these guys say what they do is a means of guaranteeing their income rather than making factual statements.
Yeah, it certainly is the case with this animal.
Well, there are caves in the southwest of WA, in the bottom of which have been found thylacine skeletons.
Yeah, and there was two very fresh specimens found on the Nullarbor in the 60s, one in WA and one in South Australia, that were so well preserved that they had, like fresh decomposition signs, i.e. maggot casings, an eyeball and a black gooey blood-like substance underneath them, and yet carbon dating said they were thousands of years old, which is just nonsense,
that's absolutely untrue. I don't know why these people make these statements, unless I can understand sort of one aspect of it, and they don't want the authorities or whatever don't want it known that they're actually around, because some clown is going to come back with the carcass of one and say, look what I just shot.
Well, there is that sort of element there, but meanwhile, the same clowns that are running the show are out logging the crap out of it and digging holes everywhere. So, one idiot with a gun that proves it irrefutably that it's there will probably put a halt to a lot of the carnage that the government are guilty of at the same time, So it's a bit of a catch-22 with this passive-aggressive type of conservation.
One of my friends in Launceston, and I'm not going to pass on his name, went fishing with his son, I think it was, up at, Blessington. And he was scared away from an area by an animal that he claimed was a thylacine. And when he looked a little deeper into it, there were about 3 cubs that were protected.
So he actually saw the cubs?
He saw the cubs.
Ah, cool. How long ago was that, roughly?
5 years, I suppose. Might be 6 years.
Yeah, that's good. Excellent. Blessington's not that too far from where I am. That's sort of a little bit southwest from me, about an hour and a bit. I'm out in the northeast, sort of 2 hours northeast of Lonnie.
Yep. Well, we live in Lonnie, so we're the primary house in Lonnie. So, I don't know what else I can tell you. That's about it. Yeah,
no, look, that's a very concise and thorough sighting anyway, mate. What time of the day was it, roughly?
It was morning, I would guess probably 9ish. It might have been a bit later than that by the time we got away from Esperence. And I say the first 3/4 of an hour, maybe hour of the journey was quite slow because it was in
thick fog.
Reasonably thick fog.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty slow journey. Vehicles were travelling fairly closely, mainly so you could see the vehicle in front of you.
Yeah, and once you came to a halt when the guy slammed the brakes in front of you, how close were you to both he and the animal, you reckon?
I was probably about 20 metres behind him, I guess.
Okay, like not very far then?
No, not very far, but certainly... and there wouldn't have been much more to the animal itself, possibly, no doubt, no more than 30.
Yeah.
I got a pretty good look at it.
And just comparatively, how big was it, say, compared to a breed of dog?
It was smaller than an Alsatian.
Yeah.
Golly, what sort of breed of dog would it be?
Like a Kelpie size, Labrador size?
Probably less than a Labrador.
Yeah.
Not much less. So that sort of size, I would think. Yeah, how big's a dog?
How long's a piece of string, sort of?
It certainly wasn't German Shepherd size. Lab, probably something like that. Maybe a small lab. It wasn't a big dog, a big animal. Labradorish size.
Yep. No, that's awesome. Do you know, I mean, obviously you had a look at the website for the government over there and there's lots of sightings reported on there.
Yep.
Did you really have much prior knowledge of them being in the area prior to that? Had you heard any other stories at all? Or?
Not really. I don't know how, but I had heard that some had been seen, and it didn't interest me any more than that.
Sure.
I didn't follow any of them up at all.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
But there's just so much of the southwest that is still either untouched forest or relatively open grassland.
Yeah, there's some awesome habitat down there. I've been over there and had a look a little bit around Busselton and Nannup. When we launched our documentary over there, actually, in the Nannup Tiger Festival in September 2017.
Okay.
So yeah, it's there's a bit of a following for it there in Nannup. The Nannup tiger is well known in the area.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
No, that's fair enough. But yeah, the whole area between Esperence, Albany, Busselton, all of that, and Maninjup and all of those areas, there's extensive sightings history going back there quite a long time. So it really is a government in denial, sadly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, to my mind, there was no question whatsoever. I wasn't expecting to see one.
Sure.
More often than not, if you're looking at animals to come out of the bush around roadside, it's a wallaby or a kangaroo or something like that. So it wasn't as if I had an expectation of seeing a thylacine at all.
Sure. It never usually is, Matt.
It was certainly not a dog or a dingo or a fox or any of those things that are often brushed off as being, it was a fox,
Sure.
It wasn't.
Awesome. All right, mate. Well, look, thank you so much for your information. That's an excellent description of what you've seen.
Okay, Neil. All the very best.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
Catch you.
Bye-bye.